I thought I was part of my family's story, until one night I borrowed my mother's phone. Out of habit, I swiped through her gallery and a hidden folder slid open. My heart stopped. There were birthday parties, family vacations, Christmas dinners, laughing faces, clinking glasses, and not once was I there. For years, I gave them money, time, loyalty. I was their late-night phone call, their problem solver. Yet in their memories, I was erased. The next morning, I sent one message: "Don't contact me again." I believed silence was the end, but it was only the beginning. The phone always rang when the world was silent. 2 in the morning, 3 on the dot, my heart already knew before my eyes opened. It was my mother. Her voice came cracked and weary, laced with urgency that made me sit up instantly. "Olivia, I only have you," she whispered like a prayer. "Help me this once. I can't call your father. I can't ask your sister, only you." It didn't matter that my body ached from another 16-hour workday. It didn't matter that my rent was late. She needed me, and being the dutiful daughter, I convinced myself that this was what love looked like. I transferred the money. I drove across town in the middle of the night just to sit beside her while she cried about unpaid bills or imagined illnesses. She always said, "You're my lifeline, Olivia." And for years I believed it, yet the calls always ended the same way. A click. Silence. No thank you, no I love you. Just the cold, dead tone of a phone line going quiet, leaving me awake in the darkness with the bitter taste of being needed but never cherished. I brushed it aside, telling myself family love didn't need constant affirmation. But deep down, the absence of gratitude gnawed at me like termites eating through wood. One weekend, the pattern shifted. My mother had asked me to stop by to fix something on her phone. She was never good with technology, and I was her default problem solver. I sat on her couch, the phone warm in my hand, scrolling to find the settings she needed. And that's when I saw it, a small folder tucked neatly in the gallery. The name was subtle, almost invisible: Family Memories. Curiosity is a dangerous instinct, but my finger tapped before my brain could stop it. The screen exploded with colors, laughter, movement. Photos of beach vacations, my parents in sunglasses, my sister posing with cocktails, videos of birthday candles glowing on cakes, everyone gathered close, singing loudly. A Christmas dinner, the table crowded with dishes, my father carving the turkey. I wasn't there, not once. I scrolled faster, breath shallow. Years of celebrations, milestones, smiling faces, all without me. I wasn't missing from one moment. I was missing from them all. My chest tightened as though someone had drawn a rope across my lungs. I blinked, desperate for a glimpse of myself in the background, a reflection in a mirror, even a hand reaching into the frame. But I wasn't there. It was as if I had been erased, and then I pressed play on one short video. My sister leaned over the cake, blowing out candles while everyone clapped. My mother's voice cut through the noise, clear and cruel. "It's better this way, isn't it? Saves us the trouble of inviting Olivia. She's too much work." Laughter followed. My sister, my father, even a family friend. My name had become the punchline of their joy. I sat frozen on that couch, the phone trembling in my grip. For years, I had answered their calls, handed over my savings, sacrificed sleep and sanity because I thought love was service. But in their world, I was not family. I was the inconvenience to be hidden away. Tears blurred the screen. My chest rose and fell in shallow gasps. the air thick with betrayal. A part of me wanted to believe it was a mistake, some cruel misunderstanding, but there was no misunderstanding in my mother's voice, no misunderstanding in their laughter. I locked the phone and placed it face down on the coffee table. My hands were cold, trembling. My reflection stared back at me from the black screen, a stranger in her own family's story. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but the walls of that living room felt like they were listening, pressing in, suffocating me. My mother walked in at that exact moment, smiling, casual, as though nothing had happened. "Did you fix it?" she asked. I forced a nod, swallowed the ocean of rage rising in my throat, and handed the phone back. Her fingers brushed mine, warm, familiar, but the touch burned. She didn't know I had seen, not yet. That night, alone in my apartment, I replayed the video again and again, torturing myself with every laugh, every careless word. Too much work. It looped in my head until it became a chant. Too much work, too much work. And still, a small voice inside me whispered, "Maybe you deserved it. Maybe you were too much." The cruelest part of betrayal is how it teaches you to doubt your own worth. I sat on the floor until dawn, tears dried on my skin, my body heavy with exhaustion. The world outside carried on, cars passing, children laughing on their way to school, while my world lay shattered on a living room couch with a hidden folder. But the folder wasn't the worst of it. No, the worst was still waiting, crouching in the shadows of a truth I had yet to discover. The morning after the hidden folder, I woke with eyes swollen and chest hollow. My phone lay on the nightstand, buzzing with notifications I didn't have the strength to open. Every vibration felt like another reminder of how expendable I was. My mother had called 12 times. My sister had left a string of unread messages. My father, silent as always. I opened the messaging app, thumb hovering above the keyboard. A lifetime of obedience begged me to stay quiet, to forgive, to bend once more. But something inside me snapped. My fingers moved on their own, typing words that cut the cord between us. "Don't contact me again." I hit send. Almost immediately, the responses flooded in. My mother's text appeared first. Long paragraphs drenched in tears and guilt. "You don't understand, Olivia. You're overreacting. Families fight, but we love you. Please don't do this to me." Then the calls started, over and over, her voice messages spilling into my inbox. I could hear her sobbing, but underneath the desperation was something familiar. Manipulation. My sister was harsher. "You're insane, always playing the victim. Nobody wanted you there because you make everything about yourself. Get over it." The words punched harder than any fist. And my father? A single reply after hours of silence. "If that's how you feel, fine." Cold, detached, as if he'd been waiting for this chance to let me go. I dropped the phone and pressed my face into my pillow. The sobs tore out of me, raw and animal. "Am I crazy?" I whispered to the empty room. "Am I imagining all of this? Maybe I was too much. Maybe they were right." My tears soaked through the fabric until the pillow felt like a drowning pool. Hours passed, the sun dipped, shadows stretched, and exhaustion pinned me to the mattress. Just as sleep began to take me, the phone buzzed again. This time, the number was unfamiliar. I almost ignored it until I read the message. "Olivia, you need to know the truth." My heart lurched. Who was this? What truth? The words glowed on the screen, pulsing like a heartbeat. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The knock on my door came 2 days later. I froze, peering through the peephole. My family stood there, my mother clutching her purse like armor, my sister glaring, my father looming silent behind them. I cracked the door open an inch. "What do you want?" "Stop being dramatic," my sister snapped. "We need to talk." I should have slammed the door, but some part of me, the wounded child still desperate for love, let them in. They filled my living room with their presence, sucking out the air. My mother started first, her voice high and sharp. "How could you send that message? Do you know how much you've hurt me?" "You hurt me," I whispered. She waved it off like swatting a fly. "You've always been so sensitive." My sister folded her arms. "You think you're the center of the universe? That we revolve around you? Get over yourself." The words lodged like splinters. My father leaned against the wall, silent, letting them tear into me. His silence was louder than their shouting. His choice not to defend me, not even once. Then my sister's phone buzzed. She snatched it up, but in her haste, the screen tilted toward me. A notification banner flashed across the top. New message in without her. The blood drained from my face. "What's that?" I asked. My sister stiffened, fumbling to lock her phone. Nothing. But my mother's glance, the flicker of guilt in her eyes, told me everything. Without her. A group chat. My exclusion, named so casually it was practically a brand. "Let me see," I demanded, my voice trembling. "No," my sister barked. But it was too late. My gut already knew. Photos I hadn't seen, jokes I hadn't heard, plans made without me. This was where they conspired. This was where I was erased, not by accident, but by design. And then came the final blow. As my sister fumbled to shove the phone back into her pocket, I glimpsed the list of participants, my mother, my father, my sister, and a name that made my stomach collapse. Daniel, my ex, the man I had once planned to marry. I staggered backward, bile rising in my throat. "He's in it?" My voice cracked. "You added him?" My sister smirked, unapologetic. "He belongs with us more than you ever did." My knees buckled, but I caught myself on the edge of the couch. The room spun, betrayal layered on betrayal, until I couldn't tell where one wound ended and the next began. I looked at the three people who shared my blood, at the man who had once shared my bed. And for the first time in my life, I felt the full weight of a truth I had spent years denying. I was not loved. I was not wanted. And they weren't done yet. The night after the confrontation, I sat alone in my apartment, surrounded by silence that felt heavier than any storm. My hands shook as I replayed every word, every sneer, every cruel laugh from the people I once called my family. My chest burned, but beneath the pain, something else began to stir, resolve. If they had built their little empire on lies, I would unravel it thread by thread. I began with the obvious. My sister's careless slip with her phone had given me the key. The name without her had seared into my brain like a brand. I didn't have access to the chat, but there were other ways to gather evidence. I purchased a second phone, recorded every voicemail they left, and screenshotted every abusive message. Their words became my ammunition, filed into folders labeled emotional abuse, gaslighting, exclusion. But messages were just the surface. I dug deeper. Late nights turned into early mornings as I combed through old bank statements, documents my mother had once asked me to sign without reading, financial forms I had carelessly glanced at years ago. Patterns began to emerge. Money I had sent for medical bills had vanished into my sister's account. Transfers had been rerouted, small sums adding up to thousands. Then came the discovery that froze my veins. Among the piles of paperwork, I found a legal document with my name scribbled at the bottom. The handwriting wasn't mine. My sister had forged my signature, transferring partial rights of an inheritance from my late grandmother. The betrayal cut deeper than any insult. She hadn't just excluded me from their dinners, she had stolen my bloodline. I scanned the document into my computer and ran it through an AI forensic tool I found online, one designed for digital handwriting analysis. The program compared it with signatures from my driver's license and old contracts. Within minutes, the result flashed across the screen. Forgery detected. My stomach twisted. The proof was undeniable. And yet, rather than relief, I felt a hollow ache. My own sister had turned me into a ghost, not only in photos, but in law. But the unraveling didn't stop there. As I cross-checked accounts, one anomaly surfaced. A bank account in my name opened years ago. At first, I felt a flicker of hope. Had someone saved money for me in secret? Then I saw the signature, my mother's. She had been managing an account under my identity, controlling funds that should have belonged to me. The betrayal spread wider than I could comprehend, seeping into every corner of my existence. I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding, the walls spinning around me. My voice cracked into the emptiness. What else have they stolen? The next step terrified me more than any discovery. I needed allies. For years, I had fought alone, clinging to the illusion that endurance was strength. But now I knew survival required more than endurance. It required strategy. I made my first appointment with a lawyer. Sitting in his office, the walls lined with diplomas and case files, I felt like a child in a stranger's world. My hands trembled as I slid the evidence across the table. Forged signatures, bank statements, recordings. He leaned forward, brows knitting. "This isn't just family drama," he said. "This is fraud, potentially criminal." His words made my pulse spike. Fraud, criminal, against my own blood. The weight of it crushed me, and for a moment I almost withdrew. "I never thought I'd be here," I whispered, voice cracking. "Suing my family." The lawyer's gaze softened. "You're not suing your family, Olivia. You're protecting yourself from people who abused your trust. There's a difference." That distinction kept me upright. My next ally came in the form of a therapist. For years I had silenced my pain, telling myself it was weakness to cry. But in her office, with tissues crumpled in my hands, I admitted the truth. They never loved me. They just needed me. She didn't argue. She let the silence carry the weight of my words. And for once, I felt seen. I also reached out to Claire, my college roommate, the one person who had stayed in my life, despite my constant excuses for not visiting, not celebrating, not living. When I told her the story, her face hardened. "Olivia, you're not alone. Whatever you need, I'm here." And then came the most unexpected ally of all. My aunt, quiet, timid, always sitting in the shadow of family gatherings, called me one evening. Her voice shook. "I saw what they did to you. I kept silent for too long. But I know things, Olivia. Things they can't hide forever. If you need me to speak, I will." For the first time in weeks, hope lit within me. When I returned to the lawyer's office with the new evidence, he leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "We have enough," he said. "But timing is everything. If you want the truth to land where it hurts most, we make our move during Christmas. when they think they're untouchable. Christmas. The word echoed in my chest like a battle drum. I walked out of his office into the winter air, the cold cutting my cheeks. For the first time, I wasn't just the invisible daughter. I was the strategist, and the countdown to Christmas had begun. The snow fell in heavy flakes that Christmas Eve, blanketing the streets in deceptive silence. Inside my car, I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The folder of evidence sat on the passenger seat, forged signatures, bank statements, group chat screenshots, all organized and ready. My lawyer's words echoed in my mind. Timing is everything. When I finally pulled up to my parents' house, the windows glowed warm with golden light. Through the curtains, I could see silhouettes moving, hear the faint hum of laughter. They thought I would never come. They thought they had erased me for good. Tonight, I would remind them that erasing someone comes with consequences. I pushed open the door without knocking. The room fell into stunned silence. Every pair of eyes turned toward me, my mother's widening, my sister's narrowing, my father's expression flat and unreadable. "Well," my sister sneered, breaking the hush. "Look who finally decided to show up." I didn't answer. Instead, I carried the small projector from my bag and set it on the table. Murmurs spread across the room as I plugged it in, the blue light casting eerie shadows against the wall. "What are you doing?" my mother asked, her voice strained. "Showing everyone the truth," I said. The projector whirred to life. Images filled the wall, screenshots of the group chat without her. Messages mocking me, laughing about how peaceful life was without Olivia. Plans for vacations, celebrations, carefully orchestrated to exclude me. Then the forged documents appeared, side by side with my real signature. A red circle highlighted the discrepancies, undeniable proof of fraud. Gasps erupted around the room. My aunt covered her mouth. Cousins shifted uncomfortably. The laughter that once surrounded those messages was now replaced by a suffocating silence. "This," I said, my voice steady, "is what my family has done to me. This is who they are." My mother lunged forward. "Stop this right now." But I wasn't finished. I pulled out the folder of legal documents, stamped and notarized by my lawyer. These aren't just screenshots. These are official filings, forgery, fraud, theft, crimes. The weight of the word hung in the air. Crimes. And then my father snapped. His face flushed crimson, veins bulging at his temple. "Who gave you the right?" he roared, his voice shaking the ornaments on the tree. "Who gave you the right to dig into this, to ruin us?" The room froze at the explosion. His rage had always been quiet, controlled, but tonight it bled into the open. My heart pounded, but I stood my ground. "You gave me the right the moment you betrayed me." The silence that followed cracked into chaos. My mother wept, swearing I had twisted everything. My sister screamed accusations, calling me jealous, unstable. My father tried to take the projector, but my cousin blocked him. The room became a battlefield, and then the second act began. The next morning, my phone buzzed with notifications. Facebook posts flooded my feed, my family's desperate attempts to reclaim control. "Don't believe Olivia's lies. She's mentally unstable. She's seeking attention." Friends and extended relatives shared their posts, adding comments that cut like knives. "She's making this up for money. She was always dramatic. She's just bitter because she's alone." Each word chipped away at me. I had expected anger, but I hadn't expected the tidal wave of doubt. I scrolled until I found one comment that made my stomach lurch. She fabricated this entire story just to feel important. I shut off my phone and pressed it to my chest, my breath shallow. For a moment, I thought maybe they were right. Maybe this fight was too big for me. Maybe I wasn't strong enough. And then a voice cut through the fog, my aunt, the timid woman who had never raised her voice at a single gathering. She posted publicly, "I was there, I saw the documents. Olivia is telling the truth." The tide shifted. Her words cracked the veneer my family had tried to paint. Others began questioning, asking for proof, demanding answers. For the first time, I wasn't alone in the battlefield. Still, the smear campaign raged on. My mother sent mass texts accusing me of destroying the family. My sister posted cryptic updates about betrayal, but the truth had already begun to spread wider than their lies. The microclimate of my family drama shifted into a storm. A local journalist contacted me after seeing the online feud. "We'd like to know more," she said. "People need to understand what's happening." Within days, the story broke. Prominent businessmen under investigation for financial misconduct linked to family fraud. My father's company logo flashed across news channels, his reputation unraveling before the world. The fallout had begun. As I watched the headlines scroll across the screen, my chest heaved with something between relief and terror. This was bigger than me now, bigger than our family. Christmas had always been about celebration. This year it was about reckoning. The weeks after Christmas were a blur of headlines, investigations, and whispers that spread like wildfire. My father's name appeared on every news outlet, paired with words he had always used to describe others, but never himself: fraud, misconduct, corruption. The image of respect he had spent decades curating collapsed in days. Board members voted him out, stripping him of the title he wore like armor. For the first time in my life, I saw fear in his eyes. Not anger, not control, but naked fear. My sister was next. Authorities uncovered the forged documents tied to my inheritance, and investigators pulled her in for questioning. She insisted she was framed, that I had planted the evidence, but the signatures spoke for themselves. Friends who once sang her praises stopped calling. Her polished image cracked in the public eye, and she quickly became known not as a professional, but as a fraud. My mother, once the master of guilt and sympathy, found herself silenced. Her endless phone calls to relatives went unanswered. The same neighbors who once admired her devotion to family now avoided her at the grocery store. The very web of manipulation she had spun unraveled in her hands. But the deepest wound came from a twist I hadn't anticipated. As investigators dug through my father's financial records, they discovered a hidden fund, millions siphoned away into a secret account concealed for years. A slush fund, a slush fund. It explained the lavish vacations, the unexplained wealth, the gifts my sister flaunted. For decades, my father had built a second empire in shadows, using lies as mortar, and now it had all come to light. I sat in my apartment one afternoon, staring at the envelope in my hands. Inside was an official summons. I was invited to testify as the primary witness in the case against him. My testimony, my evidence, my voice would be the final nail in the coffin of the life they had built. My chest tightened, hands trembling around the paper. I whispered to myself, "This is it, the choice I never wanted, but the one they forced me into." The micro cliffhanger had arrived. But in the quiet of my small apartment, justice began to feel different. It wasn't the fiery satisfaction I had imagined, the cinematic climax where the villain falls and the heroine stands tall. Instead, it felt like a release, like air filling my lungs after years of suffocation. One night, I pulled out the old sketchbook I hadn't touched in years. I dipped my brush into watercolor, let colors bleed across the page, blue into gray, then light into dark. My hands moved freely, no longer trembling with fear. For the first time in what felt like forever, the tears that rolled down my face weren't born of pain. They were soft, cleansing. I realized then that revenge had never been the point. Freedom was. Days later, as the case gained traction, my phone buzzed with an unexpected message. Claire, the friend I had pushed away years ago when my family consumed all my energy, stood at my door with trembling hands and an apology in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she said. "I believed what they said about you. I should have known better." I pulled her into an embrace. "It's not too late," I whispered, and just like that, a piece of my heart stitched itself back together. She wasn't blood, but she was family, my chosen family. In the months that followed, the noise of scandal grew distant. My father's trial approached, my sister's reputation dissolved, my mother vanished from social circles. Yet in the silence left behind, I built something new. Morning walks replaced midnight calls. Art filled my evenings instead of tears, and laughter, gentle, genuine laughter, returned to my life. Then one morning, while sipping coffee at my desk, an email notification popped up. The subject line read, "Thank you." Curious, I opened it. "I don't know you," the message began, "but I found your story online. I lived in a toxic family too. I thought I was alone until I read about what you did. Because of you, I finally walked away. You saved me." My breath caught. My hands hovered over the keyboard, trembling not with fear, but with something new, purpose. I had set out to reclaim my own life, but in doing so, I had given someone else the courage to reclaim theirs. The thought settled deep in my chest. Maybe that was the truest form of justice, not watching them fall, but knowing that I had risen and that others could rise too. And yet, I sensed my journey wasn't finished. The trial had ended, the headlines had cooled, and the ashes of my old life finally settled. I packed the last of my belongings into cardboard boxes, taped them shut, and stood in the center of the apartment that had once been both prison and sanctuary. The walls held memories of long nights, silent tears, and endless doubt. Now they were only walls. A new city waited for me. When I arrived, the air felt lighter, unburdened by history. The streets were unfamiliar, but that unfamiliarity was freedom. No one knew me here. I wasn't the daughter who answered midnight calls or the sister erased from photographs. I was simply Olivia Bennett, a woman starting over. I rented a small loft, its windows wide and open to the skyline. The space was modest, but mine, every square foot untainted by manipulation. I bought my own furniture, set up my own bank account, and for the first time in years, my money belonged solely to me. No mysterious withdrawals, no guilt-laden demands. Independence tasted sharp and sweet, like the first sip of cold water after a desert walk. My new phone held no familiar numbers. I deleted them all. My parents, my sister, Daniel, every thread severed. The silence that followed wasn't suffocating, it was healing. I thought of it as no contact, not just with them, but with the version of me who once begged for crumbs of affection. that Olivia was gone. I built routines like scaffolding for a life I had never been allowed to construct. Morning runs through the park, weekly therapy sessions that no longer revolved around survival but growth. Evenings spent painting, not to drown sorrow but to celebrate joy. I chose who entered my orbit. And this time I chose wisely. One evening, after finishing a canvas of golden light, breaking through storm clouds, my phone buzzed. The number was unknown. "Olivia, you have to hear me out." I stared at the screen, my pulse quickening. My first instinct was to delete it, to slam the door on whatever ghost had clawed its way back. But my hand trembled, hovering above the button. Whoever it was, they had found a way past my fortress of silence. I didn't answer, not yet, but the message lingered like smoke, a shadow hinting that the story wasn't entirely over. I set the phone down, inhaled, and reminded myself, this chapter of my life belonged to me. Months later, my story found its way into the world. I had written it all down, not as a diary of pain, but as a roadmap of survival. The book was raw, unfiltered, filled with every betrayal and every victory. To my surprise, people read it. Not just read it, but clung to it as if it were proof they weren't alone. Invitations poured in, panels on toxic families, podcasts about resilience, conferences on emotional healing. At first, I hesitated. Who was I to speak for anyone? But then I remembered the email. The stranger who told me my story had saved her. If one person could find freedom through my words, maybe hundreds could. Thousands. So I spoke. And when I spoke, I didn't feel like the invisible daughter anymore. I felt like someone who had risen from ashes with wings of her own making. In those rooms, surrounded by survivors who nodded through tears, I discovered my chosen family, people who had walked through fire and emerged scarred but standing. People who didn't need me to be perfect, only present. Their love wasn't conditional, wasn't earned by money or sacrifice. It was given freely. One night after a conference, I returned to my loft. I set my notes on the desk, kicked off my shoes, and sank into the couch. For no reason at all, tears filled my eyes. They weren't the tears of exhaustion or betrayal. They were the kind that come when a heart finally feels safe. I let them fall, my chest shaking with a quiet release. For the first time, I felt what unconditional love could be. Not from those who shared my blood, but from those who chose me and whom I chose in return. I looked around the loft, the walls painted with my art, the shelves stacked with letters from strangers who had become companions in healing. My life wasn't perfect, but it was mine, entirely, undeniably mine. And as I sat there, I realized survival was never enough. I didn't just survive, I whispered to the night sky beyond my window. I learned how to fly.